Hello everybody, this is Post-Production Pie with SLRLounge.com. Welcome to another episode of Constructive Critique. This is, oh my gosh, a very disturbing photo, and I just totally lost my train of thought. Hilarious Scotch tape portraits. All right, back to Constructive Critique. This is where we take your photos that you submit to the forum, and to get there, simply go to SLRLounge.com, go to the forums. We're going to click that, jump into the Constructive Critique section. First, read the rules, of course, before participating. And we want to foster kind of a community of giving. So what I'm going to do is I might set a new kind of rule of thumb that for every image that you submit for critique, I want you guys to be critiquing 2 to 3 other people's images with each one that you submit. That way we have a nice kind of community of giving and taking. You're giving more than we're receiving, guys. And that is really the holiday spirit. All right, let's start bashing some of your photos now. I'm totally joking. I like starting that way out on all these videos. Okay, so once you read those rules, you guys can submit. Let's jump into our first one. It is Snow in Milan by John M.K. And here's the image. Let's actually look at it on Flickr because that one's not a very good version of that image. Here is the image on Flickr, and I dig this shot. I mean, these are huge, gigantic snowflakes. This is kind of ridiculous. Where is this? I don't know where it is. Snow in Milan. Oh, he said Milan, so it's got to be Milan. Now, the only thing that I think is a little bit not off, but it's just not quite there in this photo is a sense of a strong subject. I guess the subject right now would really be kind of more of just this overall street and maybe the snow, maybe this couple over here, but I kind of feel like there's not that strong sense of subject in this image, which I would look for. I think it would make it a little more powerful. But aside from that, I dig kind of just the overall environment. I think it's great, especially with that natural atmospheric lighting. It looks awesome. The only other thing as far as the processing side goes is that it looks like you've done a desaturation, but you've left the reds very much intact, which creates 2 really strong kind of highlight points right here on the umbrella and also right here on the person's coat, which draws a lot of attention into those areas. So those are kind of the 2 things that I would say, but overall I dig that the shot and what you're trying to do in this scene. I'd say just look for a stronger subject, look for something that you can really pull the viewer's attention into, because beyond just kind of like looking at the snowflakes and just the street itself and the lighting, there's not too much that's keeping me coming back to this photo. All right, great job. Let's go on to the next image. This is Summer Sunrise by Snoots UK. Let's see, they shot this at f2.8, 1/80th of a second, ISO 1250, and 100 millimeters. Now, here is what I would say. Oh, this was taken at 4:50 in the morning. Holy crap. Yeah, you do have to wake up early in the morning to get these kind of fog effects. Generally, they don't really last that long and they burn off by midday. So kudos at getting up so early, because I don't know when the last time I was up at 4:50. Actually, when we were filming for the HDR DVD, I was up at 4:50 because we were shooting sunrise every single day. Anyway, talking about this shot, there's a couple things that I would do differently. Now, for this particular image, really my main interest is the fog effect, the overall colors, and kind of the sky and the sunrise coming up. It's not this tree. This tree is kind of somewhat of a nuisance, being that it's distracting me from the more powerful elements of this image. Now, I like the fact that what you're probably trying to do is use the tree as a foreground element, but in this case, it draws too much of the overall attention, and it's pulling us away from really the strength of the image, which is this scene. So I would change kind of that. Now on the post-production side, I don't typically like to vignette my images to the point where they're noticeable, and in this image it's very noticeable. We see kind of a strong vignetting up around the top, especially on the skyline, and I think that also detracts a little bit from the colors of the scene. So I'd kind of try and find an angle where you didn't have the tree in the shot, post-produce it so I think I said post-produce, post-produce it so that you don't have kind of like the crazy vignetting. Just post-produce it to kind of boost a little bit of the contrast, a little bit of the color, and leave it the way it is because it's a really nice natural looking shot. Also, one little suggestion is if you are shooting at ISO 1250, this is a median ISO. This is not a native ISO setting. So for example, if you're on a Canon and you're shooting at 100 ISO, that's a native ISO setting. 200 ISO is native ISO. 400 is native ISO. 800 is native ISO. For Nikon, it goes 200, 400, 800, and so forth. The whole point is you want to stick to these native ISO numbers because anything in between is a digital ISO modification. So basically what's happening is you're basically shooting this at, say, if you're shooting this at ISO 1250, what's probably happening is that you're actually shooting at 800 and the camera is digitally raising it to 1250, which gives you actually more grain and less dynamic range than simply shooting this at ISO 1600. So again, sticking with the median ISOs, or your native ISOs, is going to give you better overall dynamic range and detail within your shots. Just a little tip there on that side. Let's go on to the next image. Thanks for that submission, Snoots. This is by Zach, and this is Falling. It's for an ad campaign for Fashion Week. It's one of his hardest Photoshops to date, and this is his first post. And I think it's actually a pretty incredible first post, and it's a great shot overall, Zach. I really dig this shot, and I think you've pulled it off incredibly well. Now, the only thing I think that could just have a little bit of work done to it is the overall shadow isn't super convincing, and most of it, I noticed most of that shadow more on the wall where we can see it a little bit better on this side. But overall, I don't think anybody that didn't know that this was a composite is going to pick up on it. So it's a really great shot. I love it. I love that you're keeping him safe too. You have the mattress right underneath. That's good. And you have hands there to catch him. I don't know if they did a good job because those look like small hands. He probably hit his head, and that is not good. I'm just kidding. He probably was just fine. But overall, I really dig the shot. I love the concept, where you're going with it. Great composition, great background, good job compositing. To really get in and be nitpicky about the compositing, we'd have to see it kind of in full resolution. But I really dig it. So great job. Let's go on to Happy Kid. This is by Andreas Christensen. Now, Andreas, this is a really nice shot. And one thing that this kind of reminds me of is we have another poster, Christoph. He does a lot of really great close-up portraits with kids. And the one thing that I would say on this kind of shot is there's a little bit of too much shadow just kind of falling into this left eye and kind of underneath the eyes. If you were to modify the lighting just a bit, you can fill in a little bit more of this light. And check out some of Christoph's posts because he does have some of the lighting setups, and he shows that. So for this shot, I'd probably modify that a bit just to kind of, de-enhance or whatever it is, not bring so much attention to kind of the lines underneath the eyes. The other thing you can do is you can always edit that in Photoshop, but just filling in a bit of light or a bit more light is going to kind of prevent that in camera, and it'll save you time anyway. It also would kind of serve to brighten up the teeth and the kind of the smile and everything like that too. But otherwise, I dig the shot. It's a great composition. I love this furry hat that your son's wearing. I assume this is your son. My first attempt, studio strobes, using an umbrella. Let's see, ISO 100 f8. Yeah. I love the expression. I love the shot. We don't know who it is. It's probably your son, I would assume. But either way, it's great. It's kind of that classic headshot composition, actually, where you just crop barely above the forehead, kind of at the hairline, and then fill the frame with the face and really bring a lot of attention to the eyes. So good job lighting, and for your first attempt with studio strobes, I think you did a very great job with that. All right, let's go on to the next image. This is Tattoo Shop Venice Beach by J. Pierre. Okay, so here's what I would have to say with this. I think the post-production style is very fitting for what you're shooting. I love the black and white. It's a tattoo shop. It's kind of grungy, and you have this nice, very dramatic black and white effect applied to the image. It fits really well. Now, what I'm not a huge fan of, there's actually two things that I would say this image could kind of benefit from. One is, I don't know if this is the right image for Dutch angle. Dutch angle is where you basically shoot at kind of this canter, 30, 45 degrees angle. And generally you're doing that to add a sense of, say, anticipation or anxiety or excitement to a frame. This shot really doesn't have that, and it doesn't need Dutch angle. For this shot, I kind of just feel like the world's falling over, and there's not really much that it's adding. So it kind of is one of those, it's really something that every one of us do when we first get into photography. We start shooting all of our shots at this angle because we think it looks creative. I want to encourage you to get out of that and to only use Dutch angle in those situations where it really kind of helps the overall composition. Second, for this shot, once again, I would really say try and emphasize what your subject actually is in this photo. This guy's out of focus, but it looks like he's doing some paperwork anyway, which isn't something that's extremely interesting. This guy's over here kind of looking like he's doing his little DJ thing and dialing in his music that he wants on his iPhone. And this guy's over here just chilling, like waiting for someone to work on his arm. We are lacking a strong sense of subject in this overall photo, and while I like the approach, that lack of subject makes it not a very interesting picture to look at. Now, if this guy were to begin working on this little guy over here and begin tattooing, and you kind of got in close, you showed that tattoo in full kind of sharpness with the guy's face kind of blurred out in the background, you know, we're using that kind of creative bokeh, then that would be great because the tattoo becomes the subject and it would add a lot more interest to the shot. Right now, I just feel like it's missing that. All right, so great submission. Let's go on to the next image. This is Morning Mist by TJ Dalbello. All right, let's take a look at this shot. It's actually a really beautiful image, and what I love about this shot is just the overall color. I mean, the color and kind of the fade and the graduation, it's really soft, it's really beautiful. That look that you get in the morning, it's just absolutely awesome. So I dig that from that standpoint. You looks like you kind of follow the rule of thirds on this, which is great. It's a good basic rule of composition, which works. The one thing that I think could make this photo just a bit stronger, and I don't think you'd have an option to do this in camera just because, well, in camera, I don't know if you can get a position that would allow this, but basically to make this sky all white, basically move so that you weren't capturing any of this tree. If it's not possible to do in camera, you guys can always do this in post just by simply dodging it until it goes completely white like the rest of this, or going into Photoshop and actually cloning it out. But I think it would serve and it would make a much stronger overall composition because we'd have a very strong subject matter at that point, being this primarily this barn. We'd have kind of even white lighting in the very back with you know, this really nice kind of graduation. I think it would just kind of further, it would take the clutter basically out of the shot. So that's kind of my suggestion there. From a post-production standpoint, I might go with a little bit more contrast, but I also dig this faded look too. So I really like it overall. Great job there. Let's go on to our next shot. This is Need Some Input. I assume that's not the name of your photo, but this is by Photocause, and this was taken on a vacation in Belize a few weeks ago. He wants to get it printed and put on his wall as a reminder of his vacation. Now, what I would say for this shot is that we have a little bit of kind of over-processing, or at least for my taste, it's a bit over-processed. I like that you're going with an HDR with this shot, but the thing is that this is one of those shots, and we talk about this a lot on the HDR DVD, this is one of those shots that really isn't that high of a dynamic range to begin with. You don't need to be shooting it as an HDR image. A single proper exposure in this scene processed correctly is going to give you a nice broad dynamic range, and it's going to give you a more natural overall look. Right now I'm kind of seeing a little bit of it looks like this is a common thing that you get with HDRs when you're shooting water, is you get this duplication of water essentially, and so it creates kind of a messy water effect where you're duplicating and essentially getting ghosting of waves. So it looks like we're getting that effect over here, and then it looks like we're having some oversaturation kind of the top of the clouds, some a bit in the water, and some kind of a little bit in the sky. So on that side, it looks a little bit on the overprocessed side. I would say go back to that image, pick out the correct image that has all the tones from, let's say you bracketed this, pick out that bracketed image that has most of the tone in this shot and process it just as a single photo. That's if you're going for kind of that more natural look. You can still make it look nice, high contrast, make it look saturated, but it's not going to have kind of that candied HDR look. But again, if you dig the candy HDR look, then leave it the way it is because it's very much a stylistic thing. And I know plenty of people, Trey Ratcliffe included, that dig that look. I'm just not quite one of them. So overall, good job. I also like the composition and everything. It looks like you did 1/3 horizon, so 2/3 sky, 1/3 ocean, which is great because the clouds really are the main point of interest. You also did a symmetrical composition, which is nice. It's very fitting too. So good job. Let's go on to our next shot. This is Having Fun by McJolie. He looks like he has an off-camera flash with a softbox. He's got his 18-30 135, ISO 100, shutter speed 1/60th, and then aperture f8 at a focal length of 18 millimeters. Now I dig this for hanging out and just chilling with your bro. This is a really cool shot. I love it. It's great that you guys are, I mean, you look young, and it's awesome that you're so young and you're playing around with all these different kinds of photography techniques. So keep going with it. Hopefully you guys will choose to be professionals and you'll be awesome photographers. Now, the question I have is what are it looks like it's either a texture or some sort of flower or something that's been added into the shot in post-production, or it could be in the shot, I don't know. But it looks like there's some sort of like specks and kind of grains all over. I would say it looks like a texture, and if it is a texture, it looks a little bit distracting. It's kind of pulling me away from, just this cool overall shot of you guys, this very dramatic shot with, the great lighting and the dark background, and that's kind of pulling me out because there's such bright highlight points. Now, if this is a texture, generally what I like to do is remove texture from kind of the main subjects of the photo so that we just have the texture on the overall image, but not kind of blocking or distracting the viewer from the actual subject of the photo. Otherwise, I think this is a really cool self-portrait, guys. Great job. I'd like to know what your shirt means, so be sure to let me know in the comments to this video, because I don't know what that is. All right, let's go on to the next image. And here we have Self by Reveries Refined. Reveries, you have some really cool shots, dude, and I like this one a lot. There's a new project called Self, exploring the relationship between light and dark within and around us. Let's see how it's shot. 5D Mark II, 24mm tilt shift, 15-second shutter, aperture at 6.3, ISO 640. Once again, that's a median ISO, so I'd probably recommend going to either 400 or 800 and adjusting from there. Lighting is a flash, okay, alrighty, and then he has a street lamp on the left, making light rays through the fog, okay, and then car headlights. Really cool overall shot. I dig this shot, and as a self-portrait, as a creative self-portrait, it's absolutely awesome. I love the double shadow. Looks like you probably got that from the flash, which you fired twice. I love the lighting effects. You know, this yellow flares coming through the left side. And if that's all just the flare from that lighting itself, then you got really lucky, because you had awesome fog and light particles that allowed you to do that. Most of the time we have to either bring our own fog machines or we have to add the effect in Photoshop because it's not strong enough. So this is great, and the look is absolutely incredible. I love the mist in the background, kind of this foggy mist, and I love the blue sky. I mean, overall, it's an awesome job. You did a great job with the raw processing, because it looks like you did kind of a mixture of temperatures in the shot, where we have more greens over here, more yellows on this side, more blues over here. It makes for a very interesting photo. And as a creative self-portrait, I think it's absolutely awesome. You did a really nice job here. And I think the really strong thing about this photo is that it's very kind of hyper-realistic. It's very surreal, and it has a lot of points of attention that keeps drawing my eyes back in, from these light rays to the ghosting person here to the grass and kind of the fog effects to the sky. A lot of key points of interest in here that keeps us going back in. All right, great job there, and let's go on to Fishing Pier. This is by Buddy, and this is another shot, different angle. It's not black and white. It's actually the true gray sky of the time of the year. Okay, so that's a very, very gray sky. It looks like you probably desaturated a little bit, because I think there's very little color. If not, then that's a very kind of dreary day. There's all gray everywhere. Anyway, shot on a D5100, 18 to 55 kit lens at 24mm, and that is my iPhone. I had a 100 ISO, f11, 2 seconds. Overall, I think this is a great shot. I like it. There's a couple things that I would improve on or kind of fix to improve the overall shot. Number one is that your primary composition here, or the best composition for you, is going to be a symmetrical composition, okay? So it looks like you're doing that, but it looks like you missed it just by a little bit. We basically see that we have kind of this extending a little bit over into the right side of the frame more than it is on the left side. So if you kind of correct that angle a bit and just make sure you perfect that symmetrical composition, it's going to be a little bit stronger. Next thing, if possible, I would say throw an ND filter on there and drag that shutter out even longer. If you can go with a 10 or 15 or 20 second shutter, then that's going to make that water effect even more kind of smooth and foggy, and it's going to look really cool. I'd also probably crop out the sand, either do it in camera or whatever, but what I'd most likely do is shift my camera angle up, basically. So essentially what we'll do is bring the horizon line down to the 1/3 point on the frame, show 2/3 sky, and mainly what I'm interested in is the top of this pier as it kind of goes down into the vanishing point. Shooting at this up angle is going to really exaggerate these vanishing points and lines. It's going to add a lot of interest into the photo and keep us kind of focused on the most important parts of the image as opposed to like kind of the sand up here in the front. Hopefully that helps out. As far as processing and everything else goes, I dig it. I love the effect. I think since this could have been black and white, so I mean, either way, I like it as this kind of very desaturated look. I think black and white would look great as well, or even as kind of a duotone or split tone image with black and white with maybe like some blues in there. It'd look awesome too. So great job, and that's it for this session of Constructive Critique, guys. So we'll see you all in the next video.